Just 14 days after a heat wave killed at least 25 people across the United States, a second one arrived, and this time it was even worse. On July 15th, 2026, cities from Michigan to Pennsylvania woke up to temperatures that had never been recorded before in their history. Not the hottest in a decade, not the hottest in 50 years, the hottest ever measured, period. Stay until the end, because the reason this second heat wave is so alarming has nothing to do with the thermometer. It has to do with what is happening thousands of feet above your head, and scientists are only beginning to understand it. Let's start with the numbers. On July 4th, Atlantic City, New Jersey hit 106 degrees Fahrenheit, 41 degrees Celsius. Washington, D.C. reached 103 degrees, forcing the cancellation of the 250th anniversary Independence Day parade. In Philadelphia, weekend temperatures crossed 100 degrees, and city officials pulled the plug on public celebrations entirely. The National Weather Service issued extreme heat risk warnings, the highest level on their scale, with heat index values reaching 115 degrees Fahrenheit in parts of the Northeast. 185 million Americans, more than half the population of the country, were placed under some form of heat alert during that first wave. At least 25 people died from heat and humidity-related causes over just the holiday weekend. And then, before the country could even finish counting the damage, a second wave hit. On July 15th, just as millions were starting to recover, blistering temperatures returned. This time, the records weren't just daily records. Multiple cities reported all-time highs, meaning the hottest temperature ever recorded since weather stations began keeping data, in some cases over a century of records. Lehigh Valley International Airport tied its daily record at 98 degrees Fahrenheit, 37 degrees Celsius. And the heat wasn't acting alone. In Canada, the extreme heat triggered massive thunderstorms on Canada Day, July 1st. Ottawa recorded a humidex, that's the combined heat and humidity index, of 115 degrees Fahrenheit, 46 degrees Celsius. The storms that broke that first heat dome dumped a record 4.6 inches of rain on Ottawa in a single day. And some meteorologists believe the same system may have produced the largest hailstone ever recorded in Connecticut state history. So here's the question: how do you get record-breaking heat and record-breaking hail and flooding from the exact same weather pattern within days of each other? The answer starts with something meteorologists call a heat dome. Picture a massive bubble of high-pressure air parked over a region like a lid on a pot. That high-pressure air sinks downward, and when air sinks, it compresses and heats up. At the same time, that lid traps heat underneath it, unable to escape upward. The ground bakes, the air bakes, day after day with no relief because the dome simply will not move. But a heat dome alone doesn't explain everything happening this summer. Scientists have been watching another factor building in the background since early 2026, one that makes heat waves not just more likely, but statistically more extreme when they do happen. On June 11th, the National Weather Service confirmed something meteorologists had been tracking for months. El Niño conditions were officially present in the Pacific Ocean, and this wasn't a weak one. Climate researchers were already using a specific term for what they were seeing forming. They were calling it a possible Super El Niño, one of the strongest ever measured. El Niño works by shifting warm water across the Pacific, which in turn reshapes atmospheric patterns across the entire globe, from jet stream position to storm tracks to how easily heat domes can form and stay locked in place. Combine that with the layer of human-caused warming already baked into the atmosphere, and you get exactly what forecasters feared. Heat waves that don't just break records, they shatter them by margins that used to take decades to accumulate. And there's one more piece to this puzzle that most people are not talking about yet. Something that happened on the 17th of July, just 2 days after the second heat wave peaked, that has climate scientists watching a completely different kind of alert. But that's not what worried researchers the most. Here's what happened on July 17th. As the second heat wave held its grip on the eastern United States, a different kind of warning started appearing on weather maps. Not a heat alert, but a fire weather alert. Smoke from wildfires burning across Canada drifted south, thick enough that on July 16th it actually limited how high temperatures could climb in parts of the northeast, because the smoke blocked some of the direct sunlight. That might sound like good news. It isn't. Smoke that thick means fires that large, and it means the same bone-dry conditions created by weeks of heat domes are now feeding fires across an entire continent at the same time. Heat records are falling. Two extreme events born from the same root cause happening simultaneously. That is what has researchers paying closer attention than usual. To understand why this summer feels so relentless, it helps to look back at a heat dome that changed how scientists study extreme heat altogether. In late June 2021, a heat dome parked itself over the Pacific Northwest, a region famous for mild weather, not desert-level heat. Portland, Oregon hit 116 degrees Fahrenheit. Lytton, a small village in British Columbia, Canada, reached a staggering 121 degrees Fahrenheit, 49.6 degrees Celsius, the highest temperature ever recorded in Canadian history. The following day, wildfire swept through Lytton and burned most of the village to the ground. Researchers later estimated that heatwave killed over 600 people in the Pacific Northwest region alone, with hundreds more deaths across the border in Canada. A rapid scientific analysis afterward concluded that event would have been almost statistically impossible without human-caused climate change. It was, in the words of the researchers who studied it, a warning shot. What made 2021 so important is that it taught scientists to stop thinking of heat domes as freak, one-time accidents. They are becoming a repeatable pattern, and each one that forms on top of a warming baseline pushes temperatures into territory that historical records were never built to handle. That is exactly the pattern playing out again now, 5 years later. Except this time, it isn't confined to one region. It's moving from the central United States to the eastern seaboard to Canada, with a Super El Niño developing underneath all of it. So, what happens next? Climate researchers tracking the El Niño pattern have said there is roughly an 81% chance it strengthens into one of the most powerful events on record by late 2026. Texture. Historically, strong El Niño years tend to load the dice for above-average heat across large parts of North America into the following year, along with shifts in hurricane activity and rainfall patterns worldwide. That does not mean every single week from here on will bring new records. Weather still moves in waves, hot stretches followed by cooler breaks. But it does mean the baseline has shifted, and the odds of a third, fourth, or fifth heat wave forming again before summer ends are higher than they would have been just a few years ago. For now, meteorologists are watching two things closely. First, whether the current heat dome breaks down and moves east into the Atlantic, giving the country a real cool down, or whether it rebuilds again like it did between the July 4th and July 15th events. Second, whether Canadian wildfire smoke keeps interacting with the heat pattern, since smoke can both suppress local daytime temperatures and worsen air quality across huge parts of the continent at the same time. None of this means the sky is falling. Heat domes have always existed, and El Niño has always existed. What's different now is the frequency and the margins. Records not just broken, but broken by wider gaps, more than once in the same month. That is the story worth watching, not because it will end the world, but because it is quietly rewriting what a normal summer looks like. There is also a practical side to this. Heat domes and wildfire smoke together push air quality and heat risk into dangerous territory at the same time, especially for older adults, children, and anyone with respiratory conditions. Officials have repeated the same advice through both waves: stay hydrated, check on neighbors who live alone, and take heat alerts as seriously as any other severe weather warning, because heat remains the deadliest weather hazard in the United States year after year, even though it rarely gets the attention a hurricane or tornado does. If you want to keep track of where this heat pattern goes next, and whether that Super El Niño fully develops the way researchers expect, stick around, because I'll keep following this story closely as new data comes in over the coming weeks.